Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from January 13th, 2023. I'm recording this on July 14th, 2023. As always, I give you those dates so you know when this information is actually relevant because the market is always moving and changing, as we can see by looking back at these 6-month prices. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Con Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. As we go through this week, you'll notice that I only have predictions for the CBSI Hot Top 10, which will be the first 10 books we talk about. So they won't necessarily be organized by category this week because Tom and them were late. This is the start of when they were late with, later, I should say, with all of with their video in their list. As always, we look back at those two lists to get an idea of what books were trending in the market. We're getting lots of sales. Prices were moving up because of news, whether it be option news or just a hot new book of the week or some sort of MCU spec, whatever. So we're looking at what factors made them hot then and how the books have reacted to the market since. This week we only got 16 books to talk about between the two lists, so quite a bit of crossover, four books crossing over. But let's dig in, see what we can learn about what books we should chase and what books we should be patient on. So first up, we got Dark Ride number 4, the Tony Flex 1 in 25. So another one of these Disney variants for Dark Ride that was hitting the list. This one was going for $25, $30 right out the gate, which is usually a strong indication of a trap. If a 1 in 25 is only going for a round ratio, it's usually not a good prediction. That's a book that usually ends up being like $10 or $15. This book is somewhat bucked that trend. It's a $20 to $25 book now, so it has come down a little bit. It is definitely an I'll be back, but it has not dropped as significantly as you would usually see based on a book that started out basically at ratio. Next, we have The Mandalorian, number 7, the Torrin Clark 1 in 50. That was going for $50 to $60 back then. And again, this is another one. I believe this is also 7. I believe it's the first Moff Gideon in comics. So that's another reason this book was kind of trending. But this 1 in 50 was, like I said, going 50 to 60, so right around ratio. Usually a strong indication of a trap. Again, though, we have another book that bucks that trend a little bit. This is more of just an I'll be back. 40 to 50 now, so definitely a step back, but not the significant drop we usually see for a book that sits around ratio. All right, next cover. So we do have a bunch of covers here at the front from the CBSI list. Next cover is Star Wars Hidden Empire, number 1. The second print, Art Adams 1 in 25. So we've seen the first print Art Adams cover with Darth Maul hit the list a couple different times. Now the second print's hitting the list. Back then prices were a little all over the place, 40 to 100 plus on raw copies, so that's pretty widespread on these second prints. Now I'm putting this as steady and worth it because the sales are 45 and 150. Those are the only two sales recently. Obviously a huge spread on those two sales. So it's hard to really judge, but obviously people are still willing, at least somebody was willing to pay a premium, and the low end is also still around the same place, so kind of put steady and worth it, mainly because I didn't know what else to say. With only two sales, it's just so hard to really tell, especially when the price difference on those two sales is so big. It's really hard to say what's going on with a book. Next, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 17, the Lorenzo Pastrovincio 1 in 100, another one of these Disney variants. All the 1 in 100s were black and white. They had a regular variant that was in color. I still don't know why this wasn't a variant on an Avengers book instead of an ASM book, but whatever. Back then, raw copies were going for 120 to 180, which is big money for a 1 in 100. You know, that usually means it's going to do pretty well. Now it's a $75 to $200 book, 9.8, 215 to 300. This one you could argue is a steady I'll be back, but there aren't enough sales toward the upper end of the range that we're going to go with steady and worth it. Obviously, there's a few sales below the range that it had before on the raw side, but so you could argue either side of that, but definitely fairly steady here for sure within this range. And quite unlike the previous book, quite a few actual sales to kind of go off of. Still just a really wide range on what prices are going for. Next, we have Poison Ivy, number 8, the Jenny Frison one in foil on the list for the second week in a row. Last week when we talked about it, it was a $50, $60 book. By this point, it was a $75, $80 book. Now it's a $75 to $100 book. So still kind of on that same scale and slightly higher. Interestingly here, we have two 9.8 sales that aren't signature. One went for $500, but the most recent one only went for $175. I'm guessing that 175 is closer to the real price than the 500, but so we're just kind of obviously we didn't have any 9.8s to go by back then, but I would, if I was you, I wouldn't be paying the 500 at things for sure. But we're going to still call it steady and worth it based on those raw prices because it is that same range, slightly higher than it was 6 months ago. All right, we got one kind of comic buzz book from the CBSI list. We have a couple later from the Tom list, but this is Joker, the Man Who Stopped Laughing, number 4. I guess technically this is one of our books that was on both lists. And this is the one where I guess the backup story, which in all these Joker books had been out there and really not in continuity, just some strange stuff they were doing, kind of golden age or silver age, bronze age kind of stuff that where the Joker was kind of goofy and that kind of thing. And this one had a storyline where the Joker thought he became pregnant, but he didn't really, but then he did. Like, it was magic and there was all kinds of stuff. Anyway, so people were all up in arms about a male character being pregnant, whatever. It was just a goofy story. Anyway, raw copies back then were 10 to 15. The controversy has not sustained this book. It's basically a cover to $10 book right now. With the 10 mostly being due to shipping costs. So yeah, I'm calling this a trap because there was just no reason to chase this book at all. Obviously the value hasn't changed that much, but it's changed enough that yeah, it's still basically half price of what it was back then. So that definitely kind of defines it as a trap and just was not a good book to chase. Next we have Sam Wilson, Captain America number 3, the Steve Epting 1 in 25 of the first appearance of Joaquin Torres. Obviously, we were getting confirmation he was going to appear as the Falcon, and it's now Captain America Brave New World. It was originally New World Order, now it's Brave New World, I think. Anyway, this 1 in 25 of this first appearance was going from $150 to $190 back then on raw copies. Now, the only recent raw sale went for $100. The only other sale of this is a 9.2 slab copy that only went from $10 plus shipping. So those are the only two sales. So yeah, I think we can strongly say this is down in a trap. Don't know we're still a ways out from that movie, and we're probably further out from that movie than we were today than we were a few days ago, because with the writer's strike and the actor's strike going on right now, it's, yeah, for a little while we won't be affected by that, but at some point we're definitely going to be affected especially when the head of Disney's saying things that are just crazy ridiculous. My guess is we're not going to get a resolution anytime soon. All right, next we have Doctor Strange number 1 from 2015, the first appearance of Zelma Stanton. And this had to do with rumors that we were going to get a Strange Academy show. We've been getting these rumors on and off for basically since this book came out. So that was what was going on back then. Raw copies were 10 to 20, and 9.8 hit 75. Now it's a $5 to $10 book. We're going to call this one a trap too. Basically, not a ton of sales going on here. Not a ton of people chasing this particular book. I still need to go back and get the trade and read Strange Academy. I have not done so yet, but really need to because I've heard lots of good things. Next, we have Strange Academy number 1, the J. Scott Campbell variant of the number 1. And back then, 9.8 was hitting 140, 150 to this variant amid these rumors, and that was what caused us to the list, obviously. Now it's a $60 to $80 book raw, 9.8, 125 to 150. So we could call it steady. I'll be back, steady worth it. It's kind of right in the same range of where it was back then. For sure, this book has not really dropped all that much. There is one sale, I believe, that was for more. Yeah, it just didn't show up I didn't have my thing spread out enough to see it. There was also a 9.8 that went for $350. That's why I did the worth it. but that feels like a strong outlier. There's multiple sales more in the 125, 150s range for 9.8. But yeah, so definitely look for deals here. I don't think we're going to get Strange Academy anytime soon, like I said, especially with the strike going on. But so I would be looking for deals. But yeah, these are books that are holding value no matter what, kind of right now. Our last CBSI and Tom book, we had a couple of them I didn't actually mention that were both, but that CBSI list, Tales for Suspense, number 94, first appearance of Modoc, and this had everything to do with the trailer for Ant-Man dropping and people being able to see Modoc in the trailer. Back then, raw copies were going 50 to 150, 7.5 hit 440. I will say Tom put on his video, which I didn't watch till this week, that this book was, the average sales were 770, which again, his averages on these older books make no sense because it's clear they're averaging across. I don't know what they're averaging. Sometimes they make 0 sense, but yeah, I don't know where they get their averages from sometimes. But anyway, this was a 50 to 150 book back then for a raw copy, 440 for 7.5. Now it's a 20 to 225, but really there's two sales around 225. They're both pretty much outliers, and they are both really, really nice copies, which is why they went for that much. Most of the sales were 20 to 100-ish. There is 7.5 is 300, so we're definitely calling this a down. I'll be back, borderline trap, really, despite those two really high raw sales. Because everything else appears to have backed up since the movie came out. Next, we're going to move into the Tom list, and these are just basically in the order for books that I didn't have already, because first up we had Flash, number 225. This is the first appearance of Irie West, Wally's daughter, in continuity. I think she first appears like in Kingdom Come. But this is her first appearance in continuity, and this was basically in the list because she was coming back into the comics in issue 7, Flash 794, and she had a new costume and was going to be new name for her hero and that kind of stuff. So that was what was causing this to hit the list. But it was still only going like $5 to $12. So it wasn't exactly a big book. If I gave something, it was like whatever. Now it's a $2 to $10 book, with the 10, of course, being because of shipping. Yeah, so we're going to call this down, and then I'll be back. You could argue maybe steady, I'll be back, but definitely a lot less interest, a lot less sales than were going on back then. Next, we have Nemesis number 1. This is the Mark Millar series. It's been on the list multiple times because it's been optioned forever, but nothing's ever happened with it. It's hitting the list this time, not because of option news, but because they had announced a sequel. Nemesis Reloaded was going to be released. I think it started coming out, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But that's what prompted this to hit the list this time instead of option news. Raw copies back then were 15, 9.8 going for 100. Now it's a $5 to $15 book, 9.8, 50 to 125. We're going to call this one also a down, and I'll be back. Some of these Millar projects kick ass, and some others, I'm blanking on them, have done pretty well. Some have done really terrible when they've been optioned. I don't know how much people love this particular series, but it doesn't seem like it's held that strongly. Next, we have Realm of Kings, Son of Hulk, number 1. The first appearance of Jentora. This was a character in Ant-Man 3. She was one of the leaders of the little underground resistance. Back then, raw copies were only going for $4, 9.8, 100, because, hey, there was rumors that she was going to appear in the movie. She did. Now, raw copies are 4 to 10, so a little bit higher, but 9.8, 25 to plus shipping for the one sale of a 9.8. Overall, I guess I put down, and I'll be back on this one. I guess you could argue steady, but there's just way fewer sales and no reason to have changed it back then. You can still get it for $4, and the 9.8 you can get for very, very cheap if it even comes up. Next, we're going to go back to Strange Academy. I probably should have reorganized these a little bit when I had Sal Tom's list, but I didn't. This is Strange Academy number 1 again, but this is the A cover. Again, this is a book with a lot of first appearances that a lot of people are specking on, and it's been pretty steady valued for a while now. Back then, raw copies were up to 100. 9.8 was pushing 300 at 280, 290. Now it's a $70 to $90 book for a raw copy. 9.8, 2 to 300 throughout that whole range. So yeah, it's a down, and I'll be back, but still a very solid book that a lot of people have interest in. Next, we have The Last of Us, American Dreams, #1. And this was basically, according to Tom, they recorded this the day before the show launched, just to give you reference that it was going to launch the next day. Back then, raw copies were going for $160, 9.8 hit $11.50. As you'll know, as we'll see in the upcoming weeks, the book went way higher than this during the show coming out. Now it's an $80 to $200 book raw, 9.8, $1,000 to $2,000. But I put this steady worth it instead of up because, yeah, there was a $1,999 sale recently for a 9.8. But the other two 9.8 sales that sold recently were $965 and $1,075. So the $1,999 feels like more of an outlier than the ones down around $1,000. So we're going to go with steady worth it and not up here just because of that. And then the raw copies are definitely all in the same range, if not slightly down. You could almost argue I'll be back on those. And then our last book of the week is Marvel Premiere #47, the first appearance of Cassie Lang and Darren Cross, both of which we knew were going to be in Ant-Man 3, and also the first appearance of Scott as Ant-Man, so it's kind of got the trifecta here. Back then, Tom had average sales for 300. My guess is that was way high, kind of like when we talked about the Modoc book a while ago. 9.8, $12.35. Most recent 9.8 sale now is $1,200. So this one actually hasn't backed up very much. This one has held pretty steady in the market, and there's been multiple 9.8 sales since the movie came out, and I've been watching, and yeah, this has been a pretty steady price. Raw copies $30 to $100, but I'm not going to judge it off of the average Tom gave because I know those averages are always high. So we're going to go steady and worth it on this one also. A book that's doing pretty well, even with the movie maybe not living up to what people hoped. All right, that is this week's list. We had 16 books to talk about. I hope you guys got something out of this. I want to thank you for watching, and we will catch you next time.